So we are on, I think, part 20 now, which we are going to cover today, the clothing of the people of paradise. So before we start, we always talk about some means to enter us into paradise, and the one today is reciting Ayatul Kursi after every fard prayer. Okay? In Morocco they used to impress this, they used to recite it all together actually. It's that after you finish your fard, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, you recite obviously, Astaghfirullah, 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 wa minka salam, wa minka salam, Tabarakta yadan jalali wal ikram. You occupy yourself in your tasbihs. And then again there's a difference of opinion at the Hanafi school. The predominant opinion is that you delay these till afterwards. So after that, Allah manta salam, you get straight up, and then you do these after your sunnahs. But as I said, there's scope and leeway there for people to do whatever they feel more comfortable with. So 33, 33, 33, and then after that to read Ayatul Kursi and then your 3 quls as well. So these are some things that everyone should try to occupy themselves in. And the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever persists in reciting Ayatul Kursi after every fard prayer, the only thing that's prevented him from entering paradise is his own death. Okay. So why? Because if you think about it, when we recite Ayatul Kursi, it's a reflection on Allah. Okay, and it brings us back. So there we are with all our stresses in our day, all our anxiety, all our worries, and then we come back. Allahu la ilaha illahu Al-Hayyul Qayyum. He's the living. We're gonna go. Okay. Al-Qayyum, the one that everything subsists through him. He's supporting everything. Al-Hayyul Qayyum. La ta'khudhuhu sinatun. No sleep, no slumber ever takes him. He's there always for us. It's ultimate resource. And I've been pondering and meditating upon this in probably the last month or so. And it's something obvious, but you know, one of the greatest gifts we've got as Muslims is that when someone's worrying and they've got anxiety, they focus on themselves, don't they? They think, I've got this anxiety, and they think that they can't contain it. Does that make sense? So they're thinking, this thing that's inside of me, this anxiety or this worries, is overwhelming me. That's what we say, overwhelms. It's beyond me. It's like as if the milk's going to spill out and overboil. But the reality is, we don't have to contain it, because who do we give it to? Something unlimited. Just to psychologically, if you think that you don't have to hold that, and you can pass it over to Allah, or Allah, I send this out to you, and it's just that somatic, that physical, like just throwing our arms out to something beyond us that's unlimited. That's so therapeutic if you can think about it. And so He's living. We're living through Him. He's providing for everything. We don't need, we sign on Him. He's always there for us at any moment, any day. You know, if you contact me, I'm going to get annoyed. Why are you contacting me 11 at night on my WhatsApp? Go to bed. What are you doing still up? Well, so why are you up? Oh, okay. Okay. I saw the blue ticks. I know you're there. Okay. But with Allah, He's not tired of ever. And one of the things, what does He? وَاعْلَمُوا and know أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَقْبَلُ تَوْبَةَ عِبَادِهِ. Know that Allah accepts. Now accepts in Arabic is so beautiful, because qabila means to face. Because when someone, if I'm like, there's Zahid speaking to me, I'm saying, oh, who's that? But then, and he feels hurt, doesn't he? But he, as if when I turn to him, give him my full attention, you feel, yaqbalu tawbah. You know, if you've ever gone and visited, you're in a gathering and there's someone important, and you go up there and like, oh, acknowledge me, yeah, and then the person's ignoring you. You feel, oh, I've really heard that. But when they turn to you, say, oh, and they call you by name. Ah, Mudassir, how are you doing? You remember me? Think that feeling that someone senses when someone you respect but you haven't met for ages, and they acknowledge you and remember your name. Allah's always there for you. Yaqbalu. So is it tawbata, the returning? So there we are, walking away from Allah, and then we get this inspiration to turn back. But will He accept me? That's always the worry, isn't it? You say you've been like on the Eid, you think, I've got to go visit my in-law, some family members, distant family members. I haven't seen them. Oh my God, they're going to give it. And in Morocco, I think Pakistanis are the same. They have this thing, it's like, if you haven't phoned them, oh, forgot me, have you? Yeah, do you get that? Yeah, I don't see that in English people so much, but in Morocco, it's like, that's part of the whole thing. And you just got to ride it. Oh, uncle. Oh, uncle, you've forgotten me, I know you have. Is this how our relationship is, and so forth? You've got to ride to it. Does Allah do that? It's like, just thank you, you've come to me. I'm here waiting in my open arms to you. So Allah la ilaha illa hu al-hayyul qayyum la ta'khudhuhu sinatun wa la nawm lahu ma fi as-samawati wa ma fi al-ard. He's got it all. Lahu ma fi as-samawati wa ma fi al-ard. Why do you turn to other? He's got it all. Just ask for him. And they give you what he feels you can handle though. Okay? I want it all, but you can't handle it. So he gives you to in a proportion that you can handle. له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا. Who are you going to turn to? Who's going to intercede for you if except for his permission? So hold to him and hold to those who he loves. And hold to those who personify the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. له ما في السماء من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين يعلم. Go on. ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم. He knows what came before and what comes after. He knows everything about our matters. Okay, so who, we turn to him. Oh Allah, and Allah loves to hear that. Some people feel a bit embarrassed. Should I? Allah, I can't handle this. Or should I speak to Allah like that? He loves you to utter your weaknesses. I don't understand what you're doing, Allah. He wants you to do that. He wants you to be confused and perplexed in him. He wants you to say, Allah, why are you doing this to me? I can't bear it. Okay, but I know in your wisdom, but I have to question. I just got to get it out. There's people who just got to speak their mind. Or speak with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they don't. No one can comprehend. No one can encompass what of his knowledge except what he wills. His footstool. i.e. that we've got the throne and we've got the footstool, expressions of Allah's kingdom, this encompassing kingdom. His footstool, kursi samawati wal ard, the heavens and the earth. Keep going. وَلَا يَؤُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا, and he never tires. That doesn't tire him that he's holding this up. وَلَا يَؤُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ. He is most lofty and most great. Imagine if you actually meditate. We meditate on that after every prayer. But we don't. Long day. So that we've got to get that felt sense of what we're saying, and that's why it's so important to try to connect to the language of the Quran. There's a little plug for you, okay? Connecting to the Quran. So, then what's another thing? Another thing, whoever reads in the morning and at night, Sayyidul Istighfar. Allahumma anta Rabbi. Oh Allah, you're my nurturer, my sustainer. La ilaha illa ant. There's no God except you. Go on. Khalaqtani wa ana abduk. You specifically created me with your care and divine concern. Khalaqtani wa ana abduk. And I'm there for you, Allah. I'm there under your control. خلقتني وعبدك وأنا على عهدك ووعدي. I'm on your promise and your covenant, your pledge. What I'm able, okay, ما استطعت. But what I'm not able, what's the next bit? I confess to you, abubi, then I confess to you the sins that I've committed. Huh? And I recognize, I acknowledge the blessing. Go on. I've gone. Help me out. Oh, I seek refuge from the evil that I've produced. And to the end. Anyway, you get the message. In the morning, and so after Fajr and after Maghrib, he says whoever dies in that day, paradise. Okay. Whoever dies in the night after saying it, paradise. Okay, and so these are some of the ways to go to the means to gain paradise. So clothing of paradise, really interesting theme, because Adam alayhi salam and Hawa in the Islamic tradition, the Adam and Hawa always were clothed in paradise. Okay, if we see the biblical, I don't know what the Jews hold about this, but obviously the Christians, and I'm assuming the Jews do as well, they believe that Adam and Eve were naked. Why do they believe that? Because you'll see that in paradise afterwards, that we're all naked in paradise, because they have a concept of that nakedness is a sense of symbolic of innocence. Because a child, when you've got your little child, the 1-year-old, 2-year-old, they love running around in the nude around the house, don't they? They're not ashamed, and no one even gives them a bat of an eyelid. Okay, you don't say shut 'em. Maybe some do. Shame. Maybe if the guests around, then. But generally, because they're innocent, there's no sexuality there. And so that's the symbolic in the biblical tradition. In the Islamic tradition, Adam and Eve were adults, and there's this call to always cover. What was that covering? We don't know. There are narrations that say the covering was the clothes of paradise. Were they leaves from the trees? What were they? Allah knows best. Or some say there was light. So they were naked in sense, but they were clothed in light, so they weren't able to see one another. Because these are, if you think about it, the three most personal parts of our body, if you think about it. First of all, our eyes. Like, if you think about it, if I look into your eyes for too long, it gets a bit too much, doesn't it? Because it's personal. It's like I can connect your soul through your eyes. So we get... And so the Prophet ﷺ was very conscious about that, so he used to look away. Because like giving respect to people's space. By some people, you know, back in Morocco, everyone stares at one another on the bus. You know, is it like that in Pakistan? I don't know. People just stare at one another. Whilst in England, it's actually considered bad manners. What's the second part of you that's vulnerable? Your chest, generally. Okay, this is where you feel pain, isn't it? This is where you feel, or not just pain, you feel the like love, and you feel all sorts of things. This is a personal thing, so we cover it. Obviously, eyes. Have you noticed people who they feel very self-conscious? They wear sunglasses, don't they? Even when, like these pop stars, yes, they're not trying to be just cool. They're trying to actually protect the people from looking in their eyes because they don't want to appear fake. Because sometimes it's all an image, isn't it? And so people want to put sunglasses to guard people away from that for different purposes. But then the other thing, you guard your chest, so you cover your chest. I never felt comfortable. So now you see guys walking down the street, you know, with their tops off, showing their muscles off, and obviously it's hot and stuff like this. Whilst in the Islamic tradition, we have humility. Even in traditional Muslim cultures, you don't even show these sides. Obviously, it depends on different cultures, but it's an idea of humility, of modesty, and not just show. Like the idea of the Muslim is that he's not like, "Hey up, look at me." That's the idea. Rather, he's guarding this because it's something personal. Even the Muslim home, if you go to Morocco fairs, you can't see anything. It looks really dull from the outside. And even when you open the door, you can't see in the house. They only let someone in to see the beauty of the house, who they want, who they trust, and who they know will not take advantage. When you go to the shop, they make sure they put it in a plastic black bag. Is it like that in Pakistan? To make sure people aren't looking at what you got there. Okay, so guard. This is a concept in Islam about guarding your modesty, guarding what's precious, and not showing it except to someone who's going to honour it and going to respect it. And so that's the whole concept of for example, the woman's parda basically is about, well, I don't show my beauty except to people are going to respect me and people are going to honour me and so forth. And so where did we get to? Yep, so either light, and the last one, mix two things up now for class, is not your privates, obviously. So we guard our privates, and they're called saw'a or awra. Awra, which in Urdu it's actually a woman, isn't it? Awrat. So the idea is that it's to be covered. It's something special that you don't show to anyone, and it's where you, if you think about it, the sexual engagement is like a complete expression of yourself. And you only do that with someone who's going to honour you and who's going to share the experience with you. And so the idea in Islam is we have to have healthy boundaries between one another, and we have to be cautious of who we open up to and who we share things with. So our privates, our chest, and our eyes, and then so it was these places were covered by light, and then but the other opinion is that they were covered by the nails. Have you heard this? Is that our nails, our whole body was covered with this to guard our privates and to guide our the areas of our body that weren't to be covered. And then once we sinned, that fell away. So it's when Adam ate from the tree, this all fell away, and we have these on our fingers and our toes to remind us of where we were covered. And so it's a means of reflection, to reflect on where we were and to reflect on what we are aspiring to, what we lost out on and what we are aspiring to. And so our body is a form of reflection. So when we look at these things, just think about, why have we got nails? Obviously it makes it easier to pick things up. But obviously, aren't they strange if you think about nails? If you think about the rest of our body, they're very different to other parts of our body. So they're opinions, and we don't know for sure. We don't know for certain, but we know they were covered because we have in the Quran, فَدَلَّاهُمَا بِغُرُورٍ, and then he brought them down through a form of deception. Who did? shaitan. So they were clothed, they had everything they wanted, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to them, don't eat from this tree. We don't know what that tree was in the biblical narration, in the biblical tradition. It's what? It was a tree of, what tree did they eat from? The tree of? Not the tree of apples, there's no apples there. We don't know what they ate from the tree, but it was a tree of knowledge of good and evil. And there was a second tree in the biblical version, that it was a tree, that one they weren't, that God cast them out so they wouldn't eat from that tree, which was the tree of eternal life. Because now, what's the whole point here? When you eat from the tree of knowledge, their clothing fell from them, because now they had full knowledge of both sides of themselves. I.e., they had the knowledge of goodness. It was naivety, as if, you know, like when you're a child, you're not aware of the badness out there. And then when you get hit, you get nipped. And shaitan, what does he do when a baby's born? He nips you right from the beginning. Say, hey up, you're going to have a bit of that as well. Okay, and then the baby, what does it do? The baby cries. So there's the two sides of life, comfort and discomfort. But if you think about it, when people are very naive and they have a real tribulation in their life, it really shatters them, doesn't it? Like they talk about the army, the soldiers that come back from war, who suffer mostly from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, who are a bit like naive about life, and when they really see the thick of it, it shocks them to the core. And so Adam and Eve, they ate from the biblical version, we're saying they ate from this tree, and it gave them the knowledge of good and evil, and they became shocked about these things, and then they became aware of their own vulnerabilities, because when you become of the bad out there, it scares the living daylights about what you can be exposed to. But not just that, to the evil within you as well, i.e. the potential for evil. Because we have that potential, and people that say, oh, I would never do that, hey, hop. Okay, that's a danger. You've got to touch into yourself and admit, I can be a bad guy just as much as I can be a good guy. And I'm going to touch into that, and I'm going to acknowledge that badness of me, so I know to be wary of it, so I can be aware of it. If you say, I would never do that, I can't be bad, then you're in danger, because you can get pulled from underneath your carpet, underneath the carpet, because when you're put in a test, when you're, you know, when we say, for example, hey, you know, he committed adultery, this person, for example. Oh, what a awful person. I would never do that to my beloved wife. And then this gorgeous woman, you know, your wife gets older, she's had a few babies, and then you're tested. Who knows? Okay, so you should never ever say that, because Allah can test you from when you don't know. And so he ate from the knowledge of good and eat. Well, in the Quranic version, it doesn't even mention. Shaitan says, eat from it so that you may gain eternal life. So what's the lesson here? That Adam worried about the future. Yeah, he didn't think. He didn't. He worried and concerned. It was a concern. It wasn't a concern of sin. He didn't eat just because, oh, forget it, I'm going to do it. He was like, oh, really? Because Adam was naive. Because he was a pure being, and then Shaitan was able to play upon that naivety and play upon his longing to be always in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that's a lesson for us. You know, we've got to get our kids wise up about the world, and that's why I'm always a bit cautious to say, you know, obviously we have to protect our children. There's no doubt about that. But there's got to be a certain time of their age where they've got to be exposed to things. And so I'm going to always keep we're homeschooling, we're doing this, so they're never going to deal with the danger. And then when they get into the world, what happens? Boom! They can't cope with it, and they just lose it. So we've got to coach them through life. They're like our little Adams and our little Eves, and you know, boom! There it is. How do we deal with it? But so Adam ate from, and he was aware of all his vulnerabilities. He was aware of all the possibilities of the evil within him, and he fell. But what did he do? He turned to Allah. That's the difference. When Shaitan fell, it's his fault. Okay, he couldn't deal with it. When Adam did it, Allah, how do I turn back to you? I don't know what to do. So Allah even gave him the words what to say and how to turn back to him. And this is an amazing thing, because psychologically, shame is one of the most difficult things to deal with. It's massive in our community, especially in the I notice amongst Asian men. It's a real problem, because when they've done something wrong, they really struggle to. Like I deal with it in marriages. They don't want to. I know some guys. They know the marriage has failed. They know it can't work, but they can't issue that divorce because it's a shame that they're the failure. And like with some guys, I had to coach them through this, how to deal with this, because they know they have got to do it. And so dealing with shame, because what shame is a real difficulty in, like because I study trauma and therapy, it's always the big one, shame, because you just want to go inwards and not grow. You just want to shut down and don't want to deal with anything. But if we always do that, we can't grow. And but it's so what's the word? The emotion of shame is so personal and so difficult that we've got to be coached, and that's how parents have to coach their children through that shame. So they say, it's okay, I know you hurt your brother, for example, and now how are we going to make it better? So you coach them through how to make up for their wrongs, rather than you shame them and shame them and shame them until basically they're broken. And then what do you expect them to do? Yeah, and that's what, basically they end up just blaming the world around them. And so, but shame's different from guilt. Guilt's positive, because shame is where it's about yourself, towards yourself. You batter yourself basically. Guilt is where I've done something wrong to someone else. That's positive, because you can be conscious that I've got to make up for it. So Adam had the shame of what he'd done wrong, but then he reached out, Rabbana zalamna anfusana. Oh our Lord, we've wronged ourselves. He could admit it. وَإِن لَمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا. You reach out to the person you've done wrong. وَتَرْحَمْنَا, and show us compassion and mercy. Then we'll be completely lost. We won't be able to get out of our shame. Okay, shame's a big one, honestly. So, and that's an express. And so then they will give them back their clothing, but in this world, the world of trials, the world of tests, the worlds of challenge, the worlds of having to really just to go forward in life with struggle, but with faith that as long as we are persevering, even if we fall, as long as we get back off our feet and we're going forward with those little steps, Allah will never fail us. Okay. So this is the symbolism of clothing. Now, isn't it interesting though, in the Islamic tradition, there's only one time we're naked. When's that? So when we go to paradise, we're not naked in paradise. When are we naked in the Islamic tradition? Anyone? Go on, Mudassir. Well, you get naked then, yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, interesting. In the Islamic tradition, they say even when you're doing ghusl, the Prophet ﷺ would cover, so he'd have a lungi on and so forth. So we try to protect that, and it's symbolic to try to. The symbolism here is about being aware of our vulnerability and aware of our nakedness. On the day of Yom Al-Qiyamah, when we're raised on the day of Yom Al-Qiyamah, we will all be uncircumcised, naked, vulnerable. Why? Because you can't hide anything from Allah on that day. It's symbolic. I'm not dismissing the literal meaning, but I find the symbolic meaning really important for us to appreciate what's going on here. On the day of judgment, you're exposed. Allah's going to know everything about you, and you're scared about everyone else looking. But then when Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha said, "Shut up! How shameful that will be." And what did the Prophet ﷺ say? He says, yeah, no one's going to be worried about you. They're not going to be looking. No, look at your belly. They're going to be worried about themselves on that day. And so it's an expression of exposure and vulnerability. And then, so the nakedness. But on the day of resurrection, people will be clothed. So the Prophet ﷺ related that Sayyidina Ibrahim ﷺ will be the first to be clothed on the day of resurrection. Why is Allah? No, everyone gets too literal here. They go, what about the Prophet ﷺ? Okay. No, you've got to understand the symbolism of what this is. Ibrahim ﷺ, he's our father. So because he established after Nuh, basically Ibrahim ﷺ was the one to bring back monotheism. He was to bring back the worship of one God, and from him stem the two nations. So and that's why we send salat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin kama sallaita ala Ibrahim. Just because Ibrahim has got that station. Everyone respects Ibrahim. From him stemmed all goodness. And so on that day he will be honoured. That's not to say others won't be honoured, and we're going to go to that. But he's highlighting Ibrahim alayhi salam. He will stand out on that day, Ibrahim alayhi salam, and be clothed, i.e. will be honoured, and he won't be exposed. That's the symbolism here. And then others will be clothed on that day. Who? Some say, but Ibn Hajar said the reason that Ibrahim will be clothed on the day, because it said when his people cast him to the fire, they cast him naked. And so for him having to go through that, he's going to make sure that never happens to him dishonouring. Allah knows best. Okay. Others say it was because he was the first to wear trousers. Allah knows best. I prefer to go to this. I think the symbolism is that Ibrahim alayhi salam, he will be honoured and he won't be exposed on that day because of his station with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Others will be clothed. Who are they? people who recited the Quran at night, in the depths of the night, and in the heat of the day. What's symbolic here? People sleep in those times, aren't they? At night, in the depths. Yeah, when it's hot, in the heat of the day, in Muslim countries, what do people do? They sleep because it's too intense to go out. They stay in. But what do they do at that time? Most people just want to lose it. They want to go out. But they were focused. And when you love something truly, you give up anything for it. Like, for example, there's this new series on TV that you're hooked on, and like it leaves like you on cliffhangers each season, and like each episode. You stay up all night, don't you? You go, I'm going to go to bed. No, I'm going to watch that one episode, and I'm going to go to bed after that. Then what happens? Oh my God, I can't sleep now. Not that cliffhanger. Next one, okay? The next one, and it keeps going. You'll give it up, okay? What about the Quran? It leaves you on cliffhangers all the time. It's giving you something. What's the new meanings that the Quran's going to give us? That's a station. I mean, I'm not saying if we're all there, okay? But that's just to show if we can do it with the dunya, then it shows that it's possible with to be hooked by the Quran. It's like a new episode each week. Or each day you open up, subhanallah, Allah speaking to you directly. And why are you hooked to those series? Because they speak to you. That's the reality. It's not just about a story or the gossip. It's because those characters in the series, they speak to you. Why do you cry when you cry? Because it touches you about something in your life. Why are you like hooked when you're hooked? Speaking about something in your life. It's touching you from somewhere. Or else you wouldn't be interested. And that's what the Quran does. When you are hooked to the language of the Quran, another plug, yeah, and you touch in with it, and you feel Allah speaking to you, you're hooked. So, and he acted on my halal. He acted in accordance with my halal, and he avoided what was haram. He says my haram. The Quran speaking. He says because on the day of Yom Qiyam, the Quran's going to speak. It appears as an emancipated man. The Quran, when you come out of the grave, and you are attached to the Quran, it appears as an emancipated man, like this old man. Why? Because it's as if basically he sacrificed. It's a symbol of sacrifice, that it gave up the dunya for the Quran. So the Quran represents itself as that to him. He says, do you know me? Do you recognise me? The old man says. He says, I don't recognise you. He says, I'm the Quran that you recited. When you gave up things that others didn't give up, and when you heard about don't do this, you didn't do it. And when you heard about do this, you did it. Allah, and this is beautiful. And then he says, Allah mixes the Quran with their flesh and blood. And Shaykh al-Alawi says it in his Qasida Latifiyah, سألناك يا ربي بالقرآن, we ask you, we beseech you by the Quran, وما به من سبع المثاني, and what it holds of the 7 oft repeated verses. I've forgotten the verse, but he says we would never leave the Quran because it runs in our flesh and our blood and our bones, this Quran. And he read that he composed this qasida because the French were trying to completely eradicate the Quran in Algeria. And he says, this is in our blood, this is in our bones. You burn the Quran, don't matter, it's here. Okay, and the Prophet described the Sahaba, the Muslims, their anajil, their gospels was in their souls. You can't take this from. It's here. You're going to have to kill me to take it. This is the attachment they had with the Quran. So he says, then he joins their flesh and blood, and then Allah places them in the company of the righteous noble scribes, the angels. Okay, because of their attachment to the Quran. And on the day of judgment, it will be a defense for him. It will say, "O Lord," the Quran will speak, "O Lord, every person who acted in this world gained his reward. Gained his reward then, except for this man. So we reward him now because he gave up for the sake." I'm conscious of time. What are we on? He spent the night. What does it say next? He said he gained his reward except for this man. He spent the night and the day for my sake and held permissible what was so, and he held haram what was so. So Lord, give him. So God will place a crown of kings on his head on that day, and clothe him with a garb of nobility. So on the day of Yom Qiyam, everyone else is naked. He will have a crown, and he will have garbs. Are you content? Allah says to the Quran, not to the man. He says, "Are you content for your companion?" He says, "No." Subhanallah. Okay. So in this, he says the Taj of Karama, the crown of nobility, and in another narration, Taj al-Waqar, the crown of dignity and refinement, composure, basically. Are you content? He says, God says to the Quran, oh, I desire for him much more than this, the Quran says. Huh? He says, God will place the kingdom, all the kingdom in that man's right, and in his left he will give him eternal life. He says, now are you content for him? He says, yes. Yeah, so it's a weak hadith rated by Bayhaqi, but we've got another hadith by Ahmad. He says, whoever memorizes Surah Baqarah and Ali Imran, it will be a radiant light for them on the day of resurrection. That for those who will memorize it, that will shade them from any tribulations, and it will appear like a cloud or like the wing of a bird over them. The Quran will be the Quran will be waiting at the grave and emerging in the form of an old, emaciated, weak man. Do you recognize me? No. He says, I'm the one that you missed supper over and sleep over. Sorry, I'm the one that you turned drink away from me, and you turned sleep away from me. When you're say you're playing that computer game, and your mum says, have a drink, it's hot. It says, forget that, because you're so engaged with something. He says, you gave up those things because you always get, and a crown of repose, of dignity placed on his head, and his two parents will be clothed in garbs that are not seen of this world. And it says, do you know why you've received these clothes? Because your child's Quran, memorization of Quran. And then it says to the person who's memorized Quran, recite and go up. And it keeps going. The level of Quran you've memorized, you keep reciting, you keep going up in stages throughout the gardens. So you go through gardens and gardens, go through towers and towers. And he says whether you recite it fastly or slowly, you just keep going. And so eventually until you run out of what you've memorized, and that's your station in paradise. Some people will have clothing on the day of judgment, but it won't be nice clothing. Allah describes the clothing of, he says, the woman, the nahiya, she's the one that wails. They were in Arab culture, in the old, what they would have is when there was a funeral, they'd have professional wailers. I don't know if they have this in Pakistan. I mean, you'd have to, yeah. And basically, the Prophet ﷺ did not like this. Why? Because you don't induce states of grief. If you have grief, fair dues. If you're crying, fair dues. If you feel you need, a woman cries out because she can't contain herself, fair dues. But don't induce it. We have to, because Islam is a religion of real being true, not showing, not pretensions, and so forth. So the Prophet ﷺ got sick of this because it was really hard for the people to break this custom. And the Prophet ﷺ, even his Asma bint Umays, who was the wife of Ja'far, when she heard he passed away, she couldn't contain herself. And then the Prophet ﷺ sent someone, and he said, I can't keep her quiet. He says, leave her then. After 3 days, he said, Umays, come on, please. Okay, but that was genuine. But it's these women that they feel they have to do it. They go in and they say, and they all do this all sort of stuff like this. The Prophet ﷺ, he got tired of it. So what did he say? He said, on the day of judgment, those women will have molten lava as clothing. Yeah. Now, we hear this and go, that's a bit rough, all our sensibilities. You can understand, why did he say that? Because he's sick and, basically you can imagine the scene. These women won't stop. So he says, do that, you're whoa! That's pretty hardcore. And so it stops them. So when you hear some of this really hard literature of the Prophet ﷺ, we're not denying it could be a reality, we're not saying that. But you've got to understand, it's speaking to the heart. And sometimes we speak too much to the head. A man will carry out the good acts of the people of paradise until his last moment comes, he goes to hell, and vice versa. The person will be doing the acts of people of hell, and at the last moment, his decree comes. He goes, people go, that's so unfair, that's terrible. What? You're misreading the hadith. It's to show, don't be complacent. Because people, if they're doing good, they become complacent. And for the people who are involved in sin, don't lose hope. Any moment you can go to paradise. These hadith are speaking to the heart of the believer. Yeah, and it's described the people of hell have garments of fire and molten copper in the hellfire as well. So where did these clothes come from? We've said this before, is that the trees will produce clothes for us. So they will have pomegranates and they will open up, and then these clothes will fall out for us. And they will be different colours, black, white, yellow, red. It's described, these are the colours, and green. These are the colours described. They get to choose whatever garment they want, and they will wear those clothes and they will never become drab. They will never wear out. You won't get moth holes in these clothing. Rather, they will always stay pristine. But then when you think, I'd like something a bit new, the tree opens up and gives you some other clothing. Okay, so whenever people come to that tree, it will give from them. The clothes will, it said, the Prophet ﷺ said, never in paradise we will never feel despair our clothes will never wear, and our youthfulness will never waver. In Qiyam. He said, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, what does he say? وَجَزَاهُمْ بِمَا صَبَرُوا جَنَّةً وَحَرِيرًا جَنَّةً وَحَرِيرًا in Surah Insan. And their requite, their requital, their reward for their patience will be a garden and silk. So in paradise, our clothing will be silk. What's silk? You say, hey, up silk. What's silk symbolic of? It's of an easy life, because silk is very what? When you put it on, it's very like smooth. Not only that, Allah knows best, you might be able to tell me, silk keeps you warm in the winter and cool in the... Is that true with the fabric of silk? I don't know. Okay, but I think cotton's like that, isn't it? Allah knows best, but is that it keeps you cool, so cool in the winter and warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Also, silk was special because when's it permissible to wear silk for men in the battle? Because if an arrow hits, it actually helps take out the arrow, and so men were permissible to wear it in the battle. And what silk is, the easy life, because silk is the clothing of people of austerity. And so the Prophet ﷺ said he didn't like people of his ummah to wear silk. Obviously women were allowed to wear silk, but men, he says, men, it's about being austere. Okay, it's a reminder to you. Is that what's that message? We treat our wives, we spoil them, and our children. But men, because our reward is in there. And what's funny, it's a weak hadith, but it says the jewelry of the men in paradise is better than the jewelry of the women. So they get all the bangles in paradise. Because you've got it in this life. So I want to dance with bangles in the next life. So we will have clothing. What does Allah describe the clothing as? Green. Now we know it's not just green, but what's green? Green is symbolic of beauty, like of life and vitality, isn't it? When you see green, it makes you feel alive in the nature. And so that's the significance of these things. And then they will have bangles of gold and silver, and pearls will be encrusted in the crowns and in this gold and silver on our arms, that it will, even the smallest pearl would light up all that's between the west and east. That's how they will be. And said, obviously, when you hear these descriptions, crowns and jewelry, you think, why is Allah speaking about this? Because it's the adornments of kings that we will be. It's symbolic that we will be have a life of relaxation. We have a life of ease. We will be served. We won't have to serve. This is what this is symbolic of. Because if I think about it, I don't really want to wear gold bangles. No, I think about gold bangles, I think I'd look a bit of a wally in gold bangles. But it's the symbolism that's important, okay? And remember, these Ibn Abbas said that the names are just, the realities are different, the names reflect. So what is the symbolism here? It's about a life of austerity and ease and relaxation and no worries in that life. He says "Aliyahum thiyabun." He says their refinement will be garments of sundus and istabrak. Their clothing will have fine gold embroidery and thick. So you've got different types of thread work, haven't you? You've got the thick ones and you've got the thin ones. You have all of those on your clothing. So it'll be this finest clothing. And you've got to reflect, this was crazy to the Arabs if you think about it. One day, the two situations this was. Tell me from the time. Are we going to hear the adhan from down here? Yeah. That the clothing, it was brought a garment from the king of Persia, and another day he was given a garment as a gift from the governor of Doma. And the Sahaba saw this and they were like, oh my God, did this come down from the heavens? Because you can imagine these people, some of them didn't have enough clothing even to cover themselves. It says when they went into sujood, sometimes their privates were nearly exposed because they had so little clothing, some of the Sahaba, they were so poor. And so that when they saw this, they were like, oh my God, what's this? Has this come from the heavens? And the Prophet said, he says, you wonder about this? You're amazed about this? He says, the handkerchief of Sa'd ibn Mu'adh in paradise that he wipes his face with is greater than all of this. And Sa'd ibn Mu'adh had passed away after the battle of the trench, if you know, familiar. He basically made the judgment against the Jews of Medina that time, and they gave up that real sacrifice. And so the Prophet he said if anyone was going to be safe from the constriction of the grave, it would be Sa'd ibn Mu'adh. He says when he died, the throne of Allah shook. So it was dear to his heart. One of the leaders of the Ansar. He said you wonder about this? He says the cloth. And this is a reflection. He says, you know, when you see your wife sees a garment so beautiful, he says, guess what? You think this is beautiful? Guess that's nothing compared to And then the Prophet ﷺ said in another narration, he says, the scarves that the women of paradise wear will be, he says, they're greater than all the dunya and everything in it. Okay? And so the Prophet ﷺ loved to reflect over this. You see something and you marvel at it, guess what? Paradise is going to be infinite times greater than that. And then, now the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever makes wudu, then go far, because the areas that were covered by wudu will have the bracelets of paradise. So Abu Huraira, he used to go all the way up to his armpit. When he made wudu, he'd go right up here. And people say, what are you doing? That's not how you make wudu. He says, I want me jewellery all the way up there. He said. So, what other things will we have? So we will have this refined clothes, and we will have combs of gold and silver, and we will burn aloe, oud. We will burn in incense burners, and our sweat will produce musk. And so, why will we comb when our hair is going to be refined? We don't have to worry. We wake up and it's beautiful. Yeah. Why? Because there's a beauty in grooming. So in paradise, we will groom just for the beauty, the pleasure of it. And I was just watching on BBC. They had this man about, and this is becoming big now actually, and it's really beautiful. Is that now men's salons? They're actually getting in therapy now to help people out of their depressions and stuff, because it's still a safe space for men. You know, men like to go to their barbers. It's like still that male space where men can basically just speak to get it off their chest. If they're going to speak, they speak to who? Their barber. Okay? And so now barbers are training in therapy to help people, and just looking after yourself is a form of therapy. And so to look after you and make yourself beautiful, this is something, and it's something that we do in paradise. Now, a man, I love this hadith. A man will recline when he's in paradise for the first time. He will recline there and just enjoy it for 70 years. So when you can't get your husband out of bed or your kid out of bed, you just say, no, you're going to experience that. You know, when you're trying to wake him up. So some mothers, they massage their putter, you know, get him out of bed. He says, I can't get out of bed unless my mother massages me. God help his wife, honestly. You say, Buddha, that's in the next life. You're going to be chilling. You know that feeling? Oh, it's lovely just lying here, not for hours. He says, yeah, that's for paradise. Not now. It's time for work. You have that for eternity, my boy. Okay. And he says before even moving. And then what happens? A woman from paradise comes and nudges him on the shoulder. Oi, get up. And he turn over. And he see her face, and in her cheek he will see his reflection and see how beautiful. He go, and she goes, I know, isn't it? I went, no, that. He's looking at himself in the reflection. He says he'd be like a mirror, and the smallest pearl on her clothing, because her clothing will have embroidery of pearls in it. He says the smallest one will light up all that's in the heavens and the east and west. Who are you? He will say. She said, I'm the mazid, I'm the increase. On that extra thing that's going to be given in paradise to you. And she will have 70 garments, wearing 70 garments, one on top. They will be like almost transparent through. So he can see her shin, and he can even see the marrow in there. And now you hear they go, ew, you know. But the idea is that this, you know, we're going to be like angelic creatures. So we don't have any blood in paradise. And so it's just basically this fairness and this transparency, and the idea is that we're transparent with one another. We're not scared to, even though we're wearing the clothes of adornment to be beautiful, we're not scared to show ourselves to one another in paradise.